And a very good morning to everyone. Okay, now I will share some lecture and thought on professional in media practice and ethics in broadcast journalism. As this is a topic that very close to my heart, and not only I am currently teaching the subject at the university, but as a broadcast journalist myself, I had the experience of working and fulfilling the media practice and following the ethics in broadcast journalism. Uh, But first and foremost, before we go into broadcast journalism per se, let's just see what is journalism is all about. Journalism is, according to academic scholars, is often defined not just as a collection or dissemination of news, but as a public service rooted in democratic principle and ethical responsibilities. So various scholars have offered nuanced definition that emphasize the role of journalism in society. According to Dennis McCurl from McCurl Mass Communication Theory, the definition given is journalism is the business of a set of institutions that publicizes information and commentary on contemporary affairs, normally presented as true and sincere to a dispersed and anonymous audience, meaning saying that McCurl's focus journalism as an institution that plays within media organization, highlighting process, communicating with people, and then sharing the knowledge or news or things with a wide audience that you don't know. So the core function providing truthful and sincere account of events, fulfilling the public needs for information, and reaching mass audiences. So Michael Sutton from The Power of News, the definition given here is that journalism is a practice of gathering, assessing, creating, and presenting news and information, aiming at serving public good by informing, educating, and engaging citizens. He highlights journalism as a public service. This is again the word that we will see later on. Been repeated, public service that only inform but educates and engages citizens in the democratic process. The core function, journalism is a social institution that contributes to democracy by informing and engaging the public, thereby fostering a well-informed citizenry. But when you look at what John McManus said in market-driven journalism, because it's a little bit different, and because journalism, he said, is a set of practices and institution that follow certain norm, yes, and still telling the truth and independent, designed to inform public in democracy, but what is concerned is ethical dimension of journalism, because the pressure that the journalists and the world of media currently face is the commercial interest, the pressure from the marketplace, the commercial interest that can conflict with public service. So the core function is balancing market demand with journalistic integrity to prioritize truth and maintaining editorial independence, which sometimes can become a problem when we've been pressured by the marketplace or by the commercial interest. And therefore, journalism plays several vital roles in society. Often we see through the metaphors like watchdog, false estate. People always say that it is a form of storytelling, and each of these roles emphasizes a different aspect of journalism contribution to democracy and public life. We look at journalism as a watchdog. The role of a watchdog act as a guardian of public interest, monitoring those in power, government, corporation, institution, to prevent abuses of authority and corruption. Journalists investigate and expose wrongdoing, holding leaders accountable for their action. So the purpose is to protect democracy by ensuring transparency and preventing abuse of power. The role is crucial in uncovering scandals such as the Watergate investigation that brought down the US president in 1973, if I'm mistaken. And the ethics that from here is that the watchdog function is guided by ethical principles such as truth, fairness, and accuracy. And as journalists must rely on credible sources and present evidence-based fact to uphold accountability. So, for example, that investigation that exposed government corruption, corporate scandal, or social justices, the Pentagon Papers, reporting of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and a lot more that we have example around the world when the manifestation of journalism as a watchdog. And as a fourth estate, the word fourth estate derived from the term that traditional European concept of three estates of realm, the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. And we have one more estate, independent check on power. In democratic societies, the other estates traditionally refer to the branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. The press is considered as an official fourth estate because its role in scrutinizing these branches and informing public about their action. The purpose journalism help balance power by providing citizens with information they need to engage civic life and make informed decisions. The concept emphasizes the importance of free and independent press in democracy. So, for example, that media coverage in political decision, legislative debates, judicial ruling plays an essential role in keeping citizens informed on how government institutions function, fulfilling the fourth estate role. And then another role that we see is storytelling. This is the most important thing, that because we reporters or journalists, they tell stories. Yeah, so through storytelling, journalism engage the public emotionally and intellectually, helping people understand complex issues or feel connected to events that might otherwise seem distant or abstract. Good journalism translates into stories that spark public discussion, empathy, and action. Here is ethical storytelling involved representing facts accurately while also providing context and nuance. Journalists must avoid to give only focus on sensationalized issues and strive to tell stories that respect people involved, especially when reporting on sensitive or personal issues. So, coverage of natural disaster or story of individual overcoming hardship allow audiences to understand the human impact of broader events. Feature stories, long-form journalism, and documentaries amplify journalism's storytelling role. But a lot of things that we said about journalism, now we go into what is Islamic journalism. So, the influence of Islamic culture and heritage, however, has received surprisingly little scholarly attention, with a few exceptions. The research for what one could call Islamic journalism somewhat fell through the crack, which most likely resulted from dominance of Western journalism textbook and training. One question that drove the present analysis, therefore, was whether there is such thing as a distinctively Islamic journalism, one that has traits and properties different from other journalistic cultures. An Islamic perspective of journalism can be meaningfully derived from the main source of Islamic worldview itself, which include Quran and Sunnah. So, the very principle of Islam through Quran and Sunnah is already at the base of Islamic journalism. We see later on the principle that we have in Islamic journalism at the end of this lecture, but we follow the practices established by the Prophet Muhammad SAW among his companions, the textual form of which contained in Quran and Hadith. So whatever we do in life, actually, especially when you do work as a journalist in journalism, we base on Quran and Sunnah on whatever we do, because both Quran and Sunnah encourage using reason and rationality as a basic means to protect us from untruths, inaccuracy, and evil doing. But let's go into a detail of what is broadcast journalism. I explain first about journalism because broadcast journalism fall under the category of journalism, but a little bit different in broadcast journalism. The principle is the same, the ethical is the same, but what makes it different from print media is because the mechanic of crafting broadcast news stories are unlike the parameters of most other media format. Here, brevity, which cherished, it has to be short and simple. Holding the audience attention is vital because the time span, the attention span is not that long, and accuracy is absolutely paramount. Many stories last no more than 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, while some bump and teasers flash in a mere 2 seconds. Even more daunting for broadcasters, they have but one opportunity to unveil the story. Because when we listen or watch the news, we have only one time, and consumer or viewers cannot go back and reread the story. Yes, I understand now we have internet, and we have a lot of social media. We have YouTube where you can stop and rewind and look back. But in actual fact, when we watch news, especially if you watch in a crowd or in a place that you cannot control the device, so you only have one time only to watch the news. Uh, Unlike newspaper where people can read anytime, anywhere that they like. Normally, people who watch news often distracted and only give partial attention. Radios offer news while drivers motor along high speed in one-ton vehicle, for example, or you go to work in the morning, you listen to news on radio. Television news are watched by viewers who may be doing something else, eating, cleaning, or simply walking through the room. So there is no captive audience. Thus, delivering the news must be very crisp, clear, and easily understood. So on professional media practice and ethics in broadcast journalism, which encompasses television, radio, and YouTube platform, plays a crucial role in informing the public. Given the widespread reach and influence of broadcast media, ethical considerations are paramount to ensure credibility, fairness, and public trust. Ethical broadcast journalism serves as a cornerstone of public trust in the media by adhering to principle of accuracy, impartiality, responsibility, and respect for privacy. Broadcasters ensure that their work upholds the highest standards of journalism, fostering a well-informed society. Because in broadcast journalism, that we have audio and visual. And we have, when we have audio and video, and the visual and the sound that you listen to and the video that you watch can influence people more rather than reading a print media. Because when you read a print media, you can have maybe one or two photos, and then the rest you have to use your imagination to imagine what is the news trying to tell. But in broadcast journalists, we have video and audio can be very powerful to influence people or to explain and to show people what is the news is all about. Therefore, the article in broadcast journalism is a little bit more from journalism itself. Now, we look at the article number 1. Is truthfulness and accuracy. Journalists must ensure that all information they broadcast is accurate and thoroughly fact-checked. False or misleading information can have serious consequences, including the spread of misinformation. Reliable sources should be used for gathering information. Journalists are responsible for verifying their sources, whether they are official records, eyewitness, or expert opinions. And from the Islamic point of view, we can see that it's the same because we have the truth and accuracy, sidq and haq. In Islam, truthfulness is a fundamental value. Journalists practicing Islamic journalism are required to pursue the truth or the haq and provide accurate, honest information. Spreading falsehood or misinformation is considered unethical, or in Islam is not permissible for us to tell lies or to be dishonest and to write not accurate situation or certain news. Yeah. So the Quran stresses the importance of truth, and in Quran says that, and do not mix the truth with falsehood or conceal the truth while you know it. This principle is central to Islamic journalism, where journalists are seen as responsible for reporting facts as they are without any distortion. We give one case study, one example. The NBC Deadline General Motor Truck incident in 1992. So what happened was, at that time, NBC News showed Deadline at a report in which they claimed that a certain model of General Motors trucks were prone to explosion in crashes. To demonstrate, they staged a crash involving a GM truck, but it was later revealed that the crash test was rigged with some sort of device to make the truck explode on camera and to make it even more sensation. So, the ethical issue is that the deliberate staging of an explosion misled the public, compromising the truthfulness of the report. So outcome, GM sued NBC, leading to a public apology from the network, and the case became a high-profile example on how not being truthful can lead to unethical practices in broadcast journalism. So Clifford, the Christian professor of communication ethics, says truth telling is a foundation of journalism ethics. But in the context of broadcasting, where visual and auditory stimuli dominate, there is an increased temptation to sacrifice accuracy for entertainment or sensationalism. So this is very important. The first concept of telling truthfulness and accuracy. So the second article that we need to focus is responsibility, moral responsibility. Moral responsibility in broadcast journalism ethics refers to the duty of journalists to act with integrity, honesty, and a sense of accountability in their reporting. Broadcast journalists have a powerful influence on public opinion and are entrusted with delivering information that can shape perceptions, behaviors, and decisions. In essence, moral responsibility in broadcast journalism is about upholding ethical standards that protect the integrity of the profession while ensuring that journalists fulfill their role as guardian of the truth and servant of the public good. So in Islam, Islamic journalism upholds the concept of amanah, which means trust or moral responsibility. Journalists are entrusted with the responsibility to provide their audience with truthful and beneficial information. Spreading rumors, defamatory content, or harmful stories goes against this responsibility. Islam emphasizes the careful use of words. "Oh, you have believed, fear Allah and speak words of appropriate justice." Journalists are morally bound to report with integrity and avoid showing sensationalism or harm in their report. Yeah. So we look at the case study. What happened? I think most of us know about BBC's Panorama program and the Princess Diana interview in 1995. The incident that time Martin Bashir, BBC famous journalist, conducted a famous interview with Princess Diana in 1995, in which she revealed intimate detail of her life, including her struggle within the British royal family. Decades later, it was revealed that Bashir had used deceptive tactics, including falsifying documents to secure interview. The ethical issue here is that the use of deceptive practices to gain access to an interview raised a serious ethical question about manipulation and dishonesty in journalism. So the outcome from this is that an investigation in 2021 concluded that Bashir acted unethically and that BBC covered up this action. The scandal led to widespread criticism of BBC's journalistic practices, renewed discussion on ethics in investigative journalism. So this is where the moral responsibility ethical is very important of being amanah, and you must have trust and moral responsibility for doing the right thing for the right reason. Then we move into fairness and impartiality. Fairness is being balanced. Balance is a central tenet of broadcast journalism ethics in providing the coverage. News should be presented without bias. On opposing viewpoint should be fairly represented to allow the audience to form an informed opinion. The objectivity journalists should remain neutral, especially when reporting on controversial or sensitive topic, avoiding personal opinions or biases that may influence the audience. So in Islam, justice or adil is a key value in Islam. Islamic journalism must ensure fairness and balance in reporting, avoiding bias or partiality. Reporting should represent different perspectives and give voices to all parties involved in the story, particularly for those who may have marginalized. In Quran says that, "Oh, you believe, be persistently standing firm for Allah, witnesses injustice, and do not let the hatred of people prevent you from being just. Be just, that is nearer to righteousness." This highlights the duty of journalists to report objectively and fairly, even when covering issues related to adversaries. The example given here is on the CNN coverage of the Gulf War in 1991. CNN at that time was still new and was praised for its live coverage of the Gulf War, especially in the groundbreaking use of the live satellite reporting, which is now is a common thing, but at that time was still new, and this is something that new to people around the world to see. However, some critics argue that the network became too reliant on official military sources and failed to offer critical perspective on the war. So the ethical issue here is that the ethical dilemma here involves balance and impartiality. Did CNN provide enough critical examination of government narrative, or did it become an uncritical conveyor of official confirmation? So outcome from this, CNN Gulf War coverage transformed broadcast journalism, but also sparked debates whether live, around-the-clock coverage compromises critical analysis in the favor of immediacy, because we have to look into all the perspectives. But we can see this also been done all over the world now. News is, when they did not report, have a balanced report, and only report on from a certain angle or certain point of view because of certain political reason. So, Walter Cronkite, a celebrated TV news anchor, said, "In seeking truth, you have to get both sides of a story." So, in Islam, this is also, I mean, encouraged for us to be balanced and impartiality. So, we have to get the views from all angles in order for us to give a correct and also and with ethical for ethical reporting. Now we turn to the public interest. Serving the public, broadcast journalists have a duty to inform the public on matters of importance, contributing to an informed and educated society. This means reporting news that serve the common good and not merely just for a sensational story. Ethical media practice include recognizing the potential harm that report may cause to individual or group, making careful decision to avoid unnecessary harm. So you have to think forward, to think in the future, and what can your story affect the people and affect a certain quarters of people, a group of people, or certain individual, and maybe the story can give harm to them. And we look from Islamic point of view, social responsibility and community welfare or maslahah. Islamic journalism is concerned with maslahah, the public interest and common good. It is tasked with focusing on stories and issues which benefit society, such as social justice, welfare and development, rather than merely seeking profit or sensationalism. Journalists are responsible for ensuring their reporting contributes positively to society's well-being and moral fabric rather than inciting hatred, division, or harm. The sample that given here, because we have a lot of samples, this is what I chose, is from the Fox News during the early stage of COVID-19 in 2020. The incident was during the early stages of COVID-19 pandemic. Fox News faced accusation of downplaying the severity of the virus and spreading misinformation about the pandemic and related health measures. The ethical issues here, that the ethical dilemma was about responsibility in providing accurate science-based information in a health crisis. Misinformation during such a crisis can cause widespread harm. Outcome is that public health experts criticized the network for irresponsibility. This example highlights the ethical responsibility of broadcasters to provide accurate, evidence-based information, especially during public health emergencies. So if you look at this, at that time, when we faced the COVID-19 in the early 2020, not only Fox News Channel, but all over the world, that we have this dilemma of whether to tell people or not on what was really happening, because people don't know at that time. By giving the correct information, and this is what news is all about, is to share to the public and telling to the public what is important. So this is a responsibility for the media house to inform the public, and then to help them to go through during that time, during the pandemic. So, according to Professor of Journalism Philip said, in broadcast journalism, ethical responsibilities are amplified because the medium can reach millions instantaneously. The potential of both positive and negative impact is enormous, requiring that journalists exercise a heightened sense of accountability. So, because what been shown on television, because if you look in the 90s or 80s or 90s, during the time when I was a journalist, people will watch news, and maybe perhaps a group of people only watch news at that time. But now, with the advancements of technology, we have the YouTube and the social media. People can watch it not only one time, but after that they can still watch it. And instead of reaching 1 or 2 million, it can reach 10, 20, 30 million. So if you tell lies, and it will affect not only to a small group of people, but it will affect to a large group of people. Then we go into respect for privacy. The privacy of individuals must be respected, especially in sensitive situations, for example, like trauma, grief, or medical condition. Intruding on personal life, it should be justified by a significant public interest. In certain cases, consent should be obtained before broadcasting personal or sensitive information about individual. In Islam, Islam places high value on privacy, huma, and dignity higher of individuals. Islamic journalism encourages respect for the personal dignity and privacy of individuals, discouraging intrusive or harmful reporting that violates this principle. Islamic journalists should avoid gossip, unnecessary exposure of private life, or again for sensationalism. The Quran once warned us against backbiting and invasion of privacy. The Quran says, "Do not spy or backbite each other." So privacy is very important in journalism, especially in broadcast journalism. This is something that also become an ethical dilemma for broadcast journalists because of the deceptive method that have been used. Yeah. So let me explain first about this. ABC's Food Lion scandal in 1992 is also been done in many other investigative reporting. The incident is when ABC's Primetime Live used undercover journalists to expose unsanitary practices at Food Lion grocery stores. The journalists obtained job at Food Lion and secretly filmed alleged health violation. And the ethical issue here is that the usage of deceptive methods, undercover reporting, and secret cameras to obtain footage raise question about whether the ends justify the means. Some argue that while the public needed to know, the methods undermine journalistic integrity. So the outcome is that Food Lion sued ABC for fraud and trespassing. Although ABC was not held liable for defamation, the case raised an important question about when, if ever, it is ethical to deceive in pursuit of a story. So if you look from Islamic point of view, the respect of privacy and dignity, it is wrong for you to do that. It is wrong for you, for people or for journalists to go into without any permission to do the reporting. That's why in journalism we have off record and on record thing, when things that you can report or things that you cannot report. But there's some scholar and some practitioners also argue that you have to do this in order for you to get the story. But because sometimes deceptive methods will be used in order to them to get something that how to say this, something that impossible to get if you go to the right way. So to the front door, you have to go to the back door to do something to get it. But the thing is still, the ethical issue here is that you invade the privacy of the person or the institution in order for you to get the story. In the famous story of the Watergate scandal, when in 1973 effecting President Nixon to lose his presidency, at that time that they received the points, or they receive stories about it from someone inside the administration. They did not go inside there and film or to get the story by deceptive methods. So this is something that been argued by scholars in journalism and also by practitioners. But I believe from Islamic point of view, it is something that you cannot do. You have to respect the privacy for other people. So Lee Witkins, the journalism of professor, said the ethical dilemma for broadcast journalism often stem from tension between the public's right to know and the need to respect individual privacy and dignity. Ethical decision making requires constant reflection on how best to balance these competing obligations. And then we look at accountability and transparency, correction of errors. When mistakes are made, it is essential to correct them openly and as quickly as possible. Transparency helps maintain the trust between the media and its audience. Journalists should attribute information to their sources, allowing audiences to assess the credibility of the information. This is the promotion of good and prevention of harm. Amar bil ma'ruf wa nahi al munkar. A core Islamic principle in the promotion of good, ma'ruf, and prevention of evil, munkar. Islamic journalism should highlight positive contribution to society and expose corruption, injustice, or immorality, and a good and the goal of reform and moral improvement. Journalists have a duty to engage in constructive criticism that benefits society and discourages harm. This principle is about guiding people towards what is beneficial and away from harmful practices. In the case of the clean water crisis in 2015 and 2016 in the US, the story of review is that in Flint, Michigan, residents were exposed to lead-contaminated water after the city switched its water supply source. Despite early warning, officials failed to react, and the water crisis became a symbol of government negligence. So at that time, news outlets like CNN, MSNBC, and local station brought national attention to the crisis. Journalists exposed the failures of government officials to address the contamination and hold those responsible accountable for the damage done to the public health. So here, transparency and accountability. Journalists dug into the government document, interviewed experts, gave voice to Flint residents whom complaint had been ignored. They demanded answers from the public official and covered congressional hearing investigating the issue. The impact here, the sustained media coverage helped bring national attention to a crisis, leading to criminal charges against public officials, a massive cleanup effort, and a new water regulation. So this is where it is important to promote the good and the prevention of harm, and also accountability and transparency. So we need to do things like this in order for us to help so those people, especially those people who have no voice or heart, and their voice is not being heard, and it's difficult for them to express what they want, or to express what is right or wrong. So according to John C. Merrill, professor of journalism, ethical journalism, particularly in broadcasting, demands more than mere adherence to codes. It requires moral imagination and commitment to the public good. Then conflict of interest, another ethical in broadcast journalism. Independent broadcast journalists should avoid situations where their personal interest, affiliation, or relationships might influence their professional judgment. If there is potential conflict of interest, it must be disclosed to the audience. For example, financial or personal involvement in a story. This is what John McManus stressed from the beginning of this lecture, that the pressure from the provider of the economy, or from the people who pay for the story. So this is for financial background. So this conflict of the interest, that you must inform people about it first. So balance of expression, Hurriyat Al-Ra'i. While Islam encourages freedom of expression, this freedom is balanced by responsibility. Journalists should express opinions and report freely, but must do so within the bounds of truth, justice, and ethical standard, avoiding harm to others or society. Freedom of speech should not be used to promote hatred, division, untruths, but rather to contribute positively to the society. In the case of the Al Jazeera coverage of Arab Spring in 2011, the incident that time during the Arab Spring, Al Jazeera was praised for its extensive on-ground coverage of protests across Middle East. However, some accused network of biased reporting, particularly in coverage of uprising in countries where Qatar, the network host country, had political interests. So ethical issues here, the allegation of partiality raised concern on how political influences may shape a broadcaster's coverage of significant events. But Al Jazeera defended its reporting, but the controversy highlighted the challenges broadcast journalists face in maintaining impartiality, especially when there may be external pressure from government or sponsors. And avoid of sensationalism. While broadcast journalists is often driven by the need to attract viewers or listeners, ethical journalism avoid exaggerated or to sensationalize coverage just for higher rating. The priority should always be factual, to be factual, and to report responsibly. In Islam also we have this, where Islamic journalism discourages sensationalism and slanderous reporting. Islam prohibits iftira, slander, or riba, backbiting, as they harm individual and society. Journalists should avoid over-dramatizing stories or reporting on unfounded allegations. This principle ensures that reporting focuses on substantive issues, avoid causing harm, and respect the dignity of those involved. The one story that I want to share here about the Hurricane Katrina coverage 2005. The story overview at that time, Hurricane Katrina was one of the deadliest natural disaster in the U.S. history, devastating New Orleans and other areas along the Gulf Coast. While storm and its aftermath deserve wide coverage, some broadcasters were criticized for sensationalizing the chaos and looting that occurred during the disaster. Major networks, including Fox News and CNN, focused heavily on dramatic images of looting, violent crime, and breakdown in laws and order, sometimes at the expense of balanced reporting on rescue efforts and struggle of the affected communities. So that article concerned critic argued that emphasis on violence and lawlessness painted an unfair and exaggerated picture of New Orleans residents, many of whom were portrayed as criminals rather than victims in need of help. This sensationalism overshadowed the real story of the government failures in disaster response. So the impact, the coverage contributed to a negative public perception of the victim, with some accusing the media of perpetuating racial stereotype. It raised questions about journalistic responsibility during crisis and ethics of focusing on the most shocking elements of the story rather than a balanced view of the situation. So a media historian, John Durham Peter, said that broadcast journalism wields an extraordinary power to shape public perception. Ethical journalism, therefore, must be vigilant in its dedication to truth and avoidance of manipulation, particularly through visual or auditory framing. So, with all the ethical principle that we saw just now in broadcast journalism, we derive to four key principles in Islamic journalism. One, the principle is the concept of haq. The Quran clearly instructs, do not mix haq with batil and hide the haq knowledgeably. In this research, Amada counts at least 138 references to the root word naba, mean news, that must be based on truth and mixed with willful falsehood in Quran. The principle is essential as indicated in the Quran. O believers, verify it, lest you adversely impact some people unknowingly and then become embarrassed over what you did. Furthermore, Hamada argues that news must carry a strong sense of responsibility and accountability on the part of journalists and their organization. So the first principle is the concept of haq or truth. The second principle is based on a set of concepts that cluster around pedagogic function of journalists as public communicators, known as tabligh, which broadly means to spread truth and good deeds to the public. In the context of this principle, journalists are expected to play the role of an educator or teacher who promotes a positive attitude to the members of the audience and encourages them to do good deeds, enjoying what is right and prohibiting what is wrong. The key principle obliges Muslims to invite good and forbid, whether in words or act or silent denunciation, any evil what they see being committed. So the first principle is truth. Second principle is tabligh, as to spread the truth and spread good deeds to the public. And the third principle is the what we call maslahah, which means to seek the best of the public interest. The idea behind is perhaps best illustrated is one of the Prophet Muhammad saying, whoever of you sees an evil action, you must change it with his hand. If he is not able to do so, then with his tongue. If he is not able to do so, then with his heart, and this is the weakest of faith. It's Hadith Muslim 34. What this principle essentially calls for is profoundly interventionist attitude and participant stance. Journalists are not seen as a detached observers, as bystanders or uninvolved witnesses. To the contrary, journalists are expected to involve themselves in public discourse and to take stance in order to promote social change in society. Journalists serve their audience in the role of agent of change who contributes to the betterment of the society. The final principle is called wasatiyah, which means moderation in concept, emphasized in both Quran and Sunnah. Moderation in this context implies impartiality and fairness. Journalists may be endorse a particular political cause or support one side of the conflict over the other. The core meaning of moderation is justice or adil. This notion carries a wide array of connotations, including straightforwardness, impartiality, fairness, equitableness, probity, honesty, uprightness, equitable composition or just composition. There are obvious tension between moderation principle and maslahah if the latter is primarily understood in terms of even interventionalist attitude. So journalism, particularly in the realm of broadcasting, carries a significant responsibility as it shapes public opinion and impart societal behavior. Ethical practices in journalism, such as truthfulness, transparency, fairness, and accountability, are fundamental to maintaining public trust and upholding the integrity of the profession. Sensationalism, bias, and misinformation can erode the credibility of the media and damage the fabric of the society. Because of it's very important, if the media house lose credibility, then people will not believe anymore on the news being carried by the media outlet, and this can become detrimental to the business itself or for the media house. From an Islamic perspective, journalism is not just about the dissemination of information, but about upholding justice and promoting the truth. Islamic teaching advocate for truthfulness, or siddiq, justice, adil, and accountability of hizbah in communication. Journalists must avoid harm by being mindful of the potential consequences of their reporting and by steering clear of sensationalism, defamation, and the exploitation of personal tragedies. As broadcast journalists, you are not only professional but also custodian of information that shapes the moral and ethical compass of society. The role of the media is akin to what of the watchdog or fourth estate, like we discussed early on, holding power to account and ensuring the society function with transparency. Whether viewed from universal ethics of journalism or through the lens of Islamic principle, the goal remains the same: to serve public with the integrity, truth, and justice. So in a world increasingly driven by fast-paced media, let us strive to be responsible journalists who practice with both professional diligence and a deep sense of ethical commitment. This is how we maintain the noble purpose of journalism and contribute positive to the society. With that, I end my lecture. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.